yet we planned it. We're coordinated. Is this light okay? Is that okay? Good morning, everyone. That was a lot of Nikki there. Sorry, very loud. I just want to welcome everyone this morning on a beautiful day, another beautiful day, touch wood. I was in this space on Sunday for the Wizard of Oz. I don't know if any of you were able to see that, or most of you. I know I saw some faces out here. What a wonderful production that was. And it's hard to imagine it all took place here on the stage, which is so cleaned and cleared now. Lots of talent, lots of young talent. I saw a couple of high school students from Patrick Fogarty headlining as Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion, and I had just seen them on stage 2 weeks prior with their school production of Little Shop of Horrors. I just don't know how they manage their time, but so great to see that engagement. So as most of you know, I'm Nikki Locker, the Director of Community Engagement and Lifelong Learning at Lakehead, and Wednesday mornings with Tall is one of my favorite places to be. I'd like to start us off in a good way today with the land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by recognizing that Lakehead University respectfully acknowledges its campuses are located on the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. Lakehead Thunder Bay is located on the traditional lands of the Fort William First Nation, signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. Lakehead, Orillia here and the Barrie STEM Hub, which is new to us, are located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, which include the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. The Chippewa Tri-Council First Nations of Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewas of Rama and Georgina Island First Nation are all signatories to the Williams Treaty. We also recognize the Huron-Wendat peoples who lived in the territory prior to the middle of the 17th century. Lakehead University acknowledges the history that many nations hold in the areas around our campuses and is committed to a relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples based on the principles of mutual trust, respect, reciprocity, and collaboration in the spirit of reconciliation. I'm missing our Lakehead Book Club this morning to be here, but they are meeting today to discuss the book Unreconciled by Jessie Wendat. It's a wonderful book to read. It talks a lot about reconciliation, the racism being faced still currently. And I know in the last week, as an optimist, I've seen a lot of people standing up, speaking out, showing up, and standing alongside others to learn more about reconciliation, to learn more about the harms that have been caused historically and currently. And I do have hope for our community that we will continue to learn together and grow together. And as I've said, as summer approaches and we're spending time on this land and different lands in our province and beyond, learning about the peoples who were the original stewards is a great place to start. So that you can really appreciate the land that you're enjoying. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's fourth session, I can't believe how quickly it's going, in the Feed the Soul Tall Spring Lecture Series. It's a pleasure to introduce our guest lecturer, Isabel Huggan, an internationally acclaimed Canadian writer whose life and work have been shaped by storytelling, travel, teaching, and a deep exploration of what it means to belong. Born and raised in Elmira, Ontario, Isabel studied English and philosophy at the University of Western Ontario before beginning a career in publishing and later teaching English, theatre, and creative writing in Ontario high schools. Her literary career began with poetry and short stories published in Canadian literary magazines, but she first gained national attention when her short story, Celia Behind Me, won first prize in a National Film Board of Canada contest for women scriptwriters. That story later became part of her celebrated collection, The Elizabeth Stories, published in 1984. The book received widespread acclaim in Canada, Britain, and the United States, earning awards including the Quality Paperback New Voice Award and the Denver Quarterly Best Fiction Prize. Through these stories, Isabel captured childhood with extraordinary emotional precision and established herself as one of Canada's most important short story writers. Her later collection, You Never Know, expanded her literary landscape internationally, drawing on experiences in Canada, France, Scotland, and Kenya. Her acclaimed memoir, Belonging, Home Away from Home, explored themes of identity, migration, memory, and home, resonating deeply with readers around the world and earning the prestigious Charles Taylor Prize for Literary Nonfiction in 2004. Beyond her achievements as an author, Isabel has devoted decades to teaching and mentoring writers across Canada, Europe, Asia, and Australia, including many years with the Humber School for Writers. Her work continues to appear in literary journals, anthologies, reviews, and travel writing, and her stories have been widely studied in schools and universities. What makes Isabel Huggan's writing so enduring is her remarkable ability to connect the personal with the universal. Whether writing about childhood, family displacement, illness, or the search for home, she invites readers into conversations that are intimate, thoughtful, and profoundly human. During our break, you will have the opportunity to purchase some of her books through Manticore Books in the back room. Please join me in warmly welcoming today's lecturer, Isabel Huggan.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. That was enough. I think we can all go home now. It was a lovely introduction, and I'm really glad to be here and very happy to see old friends, new friends. It's really doing my heart good. When I agreed to be part of this series, it was largely because the topic, feeding your soul, or feeding the soul, really interested me, and I must say I have felt well fed by the speakers we've had so far. I also agreed because Anne Hilliard was given my name as a possible speaker, not by anyone in Orillia, where I've been nicely invisible for the last few years, but by her best friend, Jeanette Panagapka, out in BC, whom I knew when I was growing up in Elmira many decades ago. As she had learned that I live here now, Jeanette wrote to Anne suggesting me for this series. So if you are bored this morning, blame Jeanette. I'm telling you this for a reason, actually, to bring to mind the delight to be had from personal connections formed over the decades. Being remembered, remembering. It's part of what I want to say this morning, closely connected to my theme of writing as a way of feeding the soul. As we each may have a different interpretation of the notion of soul, I should be clear that for me, it's my invisible self. In a sense, my soul is who I think I am. Now, I believe that remembering and being remembered is deeply important. Feeding our souls by supporting our sense of who we are. I would go so far as to say that not being forgotten should be included in Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. I'll come back to this idea, but now I want you to look at the phrase on the screen. There we go. It's a Latin phrase attributed to the Roman historian Pliny more than 2,000 years ago. It's our theme for the day. Not a day without a line. This morning, I want to share a little bit about how reading and writing has fed my soul, but I'm also here to suggest how it can feed yours on a daily basis. With writing in particular, as well as its close cousin, reading. So after I accepted Anne's invitation, I wondered how I could best encourage you to engage daily in these life-affirming acts. Maybe I decided by emphasizing that we're never too old to learn, especially if what we're learning is something we already know. So much easier. Here's this thought. In the words of the magician Merlin, speaking to young Arthur, who will one day be the ruler of Camelot. The scene is taking place in a novel you may have read when you were a teenager, The Once and Future King by T.H. White. What's the cure for sadness? Learning things. Many of us now, I believe, go forward in a state of missing and mourning, deeply sad over the loss of partners, friends, and family, or on a daily basis feeling anguish over the state of the world, or dealing with the sharp disappointment in our own aging bodies, unable to do the limbo anymore. Some of us even have trouble with gentle yoga. What to do, how to counter sadness. Learn things, says Merlin, and I'm adding, do things. Learning and doing. Positive actions transform negative energy into something useful and life-sustaining, even life-enhancing, like good for the soul. My goal today is to convince you that daily writing, even one word, even one, can give you a good psychic boost and may turn out to be a gift to others besides yourself, a legacy even. You know, taking time on your own to write is not a selfish act. Those of us who were trained as children to never be self-centered may still feel that pulling away to write for an hour or even 10 minutes looks selfish. But no, banish this thought. It is life-affirming. It is life-affirming to take time to write. Those who express themselves in painting or music or dance or theater focus their creativity by constant practice. So you might consider writing for however long you want to spend to be your practice, like a kind of meditation. I've been writing for most of my life, so it tends to be second nature, and you might regard me with something like suspicion. Yeah, it's easy for her. She's a writer. Well, it's true enough that the worst instructors are the most proficient at whatever they're teaching, be it math or soccer or knitting. But they got to be good at what they do by practicing over and over and over. I'm not going to suggest that you make writing such a huge part of your life unless you have the unrealized dream of becoming an author. That's good too. No, my point is just that daily writing can do you good. It will nurture your creative spirit and your soul. Of course, you have probably other long-established ways to nurture your own special creative spirit, music or painting or gardening or bird watching. But not one of these wonderful activities excludes a little writing on the side. And all of them thrive in a relationship with words. Whatever else you do, you can get the benefits that come with regular writing as part of your personal health plan. I saw some of you here a couple of weeks ago nodding in acknowledgement of Rita Deverell's mention of The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron's book method of daily pages. I too have filled journals and notebooks with that early morning clearing of the mental sinuses. What I'm proposing is not that. Maybe it's the same ballpark, but it's a different ball game with different rules. What I'm more interested in is promoting a relationship, a renewed relationship with language, with not so much with the emotional outpourings, valuable though they are. What I'm promoting is gentle stretching, an enhancement of the mind's relationship to language. And as you can see, I call this gentle mental. Speaking frankly, are we not, many of us here, just slightly obsessed with our own mental agility more than our muscular? I don't think I am the only person here who on occasion finds herself blank. The word is gone, just gone. You can see I'm scared enough. I've got notes. However, neurologists reassure us that brief lapses are not a sign of dementia, but simply a normal aspect of the aging brain, a small working flaw that can be dealt with. In question period, if you're interested, I will share my method for missing word location. It works pretty well. One of the best methods is simply staying in touch with language as much as you can. Reading and writing with intention to keep the brain's connective apparatus really working. I'm probably going to repeat myself a lot this morning, as that's another aspect of the aging brain. Anyway, I want to emphasize that there are many ways to keep our brains flexible. Writing is the best, and reading is next, and they are very much connected. Let's start there. The easiest way in is poetry. Poetry is a perfect method for keeping our old neurons snapping. You may not feel like writing your own poem, but you can read someone else's, and if you liked it, if the poem resonated for you, whatever the sound or the meaning, then write it down, what we used to call copying it out. And that act of writing helps you experience the poem more deeply and may even inspire you to try your own. I'll mention some other poets and poems later if I don't forget. But now I'm going to read you the poem Forgetfulness by the poet Billy Collins. Many of you probably know this wonderful poem, but it's really fun to read. So here we go. The name of the author is the first to go, followed obediently by the title, the plot, the heartbreaking conclusion, the entire novel, which suddenly becomes one you never read, never even heard of. As if by one, the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. Long ago, you kissed the names of the 9 muses goodbye and watched the quadratic equation pack its bag. And even now, as you memorize the order of the planets, something else is slipping away. A state flower, perhaps, the address of an uncle, the capital of Paraguay. Whatever it is you are struggling to remember, it is not poised on the tip of your tongue, or even lurking in some obscure corner of your spleen. It has floated away down a dark mythological river whose name begins with an L, as far as you can recall, well on your own way to oblivion, where you will join those who have even forgotten how to swim and how to ride a bicycle. No wonder you rise in the middle of the night to look up the date of a famous battle in a book on war. No wonder the moon in the window seems to have drifted out of a love poem you used to know by heart. Billy Collins, if you don't know, is a wonderful poet to discover. It's worth memorizing. Try. I'm sure all of us here in this room, given who I believe we are, learned to memorize in grade school and Sunday school, even high school. Some English teachers required it. And I believe that the more we activate past learned lines, the better it is for our present creative thinking. But unless we practice, these words lie dormant. Let me just throw out a few lines as a kind of tester to see whether you have retained as much as I think you have. I happen to know there's someone here today who can recite Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky, but that's beyond most of us. I'm going to go easy. I'm going to say the first line, and I want you to continue speaking loudly, as I'm a little hard of hearing. So let's see how we go. I'm going to say the first words, and then you join me. In Flanders fields, between crosses row on row that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard beneath the guns below. See? It's there. It's there. It's in your head. You couldn't help yourself. You could not help yourself. Those words were so embedded. There's probably some other really good Bible verses and childhood songs, but I want to do one more now, if only to make another point that poems we once learned may still be in fuzzy little corners in the dim recesses of our brains, but when we shine a light on them, they are so happy to come out. The 19th century poetry of Keats and Shelley and Wordsworth may seem very old-fashioned now, but have a look again. These old guys had much to say to us, especially now, at this stage in our lives. For example, Wordsworth's poem, Intimations of Immortality, which I always thought was imitations of immorality, which was going to be so much more fun. Many of you will remember lines which come near the end of this long poem because they were recited by Natalie Wood in the film Splendor in the Grass in 1961. Folks, that was 65 years ago. Seems like yesterday. It was so romantic. Natalie and Warren Beatty. Oh, come along with me now. I'm sure you remember. Say along with me if you can. This is towards the end. What though the radiance that was once so bright be ever taken from my sight, though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, we will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind. I start to weep if I go further. We could move on to W.B. Yeats and his shockingly relevant poem, The Second Coming, but it's too near the mark for comfort these days. And really my point is, the poetry we learned when we were young can have a second coming now, at this age, at this stage. A little flirtation with past poems will encourage you to seek out contemporary poetry that speaks to us in less formal and more personal ways. Canada has a stunning array of excellent poets I can suggest. And of course, lyrics to songs by Joni Mitchell or Leonard Cohen contain much to mull over and digest to feed your souls. Now here's a free, creative thought. You can do as I do and put up a little bulletin board in the kitchen or alongside the mirror in the bathroom and keep there poems to read or to rememorize. Even if you never learn these lines, reading them as you brush your teeth or stir your coffee is medicine for your soul at the same time. Good for your brain and good for your heart. I believe that our minds love language when words are arranged in a rhythmic way, especially when these words produce images that we can see or hear. I believe that the human soul needs words and is deeply stimulated by reading them and hearing them. Writing is better for the brain than reading, which is passive, not active. So even copying out a poem is useful. Also, it's best done by hand. For what we're actually doing when we're writing cursive or even printing is a kind of drawing. It's art. A kind of art that involves the hand-eye relationship and makes the brain work more deeply. However, whether with a pen or on computer keys, using our hands means physical involvement, the very best way to learn. Remember, this is about learning, this lecture. Writing is also the most comforting human activity. It can be done at any speed and without an audience. The private act of finding and repeating words keeps the brain alive. So I'm proposing that copying out a poem you love is a great way to get started. And by loving what somebody else has written, you kind of make it yours. As for forgetting words or being unable to think of exactly the one that you want, let me just see, there we go. There's a really good way to do that. Keep a dictionary close at hand. And I also suggest not just the dictionary, which you have to know what you're looking for when you use a dictionary, but a thesaurus. Now, those of you who are already familiar and comfortable with computers are using Google to find synonyms. But I'm really urging you to get a thesaurus. And this one was my husband's. It's decades old. And you think of a word and you can't quite think, it's not that word, it's another. You use thesaurus. You start with the word that you know isn't the right one, and then it gives you wonderful lists. I can spend a happy half hour just with this. And I do believe that that activity is part of the learning curve. So when I say the importance of language, to me, to you, I'm speaking about my native language, English, but it could be French or Portuguese, Ojibwa, Gaelic, but using the best words you can to express your own thoughts. I've loved English for as long as I can remember, and I also loved music. My father taught me songs popular back in the 1940s. I could always get a laugh with Mersey Dotes. Can you do it? Mersey dotes and dozy dotes and little lambs eat ivy, a kid'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you? Oh, Mersey dotes and dozy dotes and little lambs eat ivy, a kid'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you? Ah, perfect. Soon I was making my own songs, and I would have forgotten the one I'm going to sing now if my father had not written it down and saved it. So this is the point. He wrote it down. And the song was drawn from life. Here we go. Here comes the old milk horse clopping down the street. He is bringing us milk and other things to eat. Now he's going home again to lie down on the hay, because the poor old milk horse has had a busy day. I know. Oh, thank you. Oh. Even as a little kid, I wanted to put into words what I saw and heard, and then make something from that. I was already wanting to tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Here are the two verbs to notice there, make and tell. Making and telling are essential to the creative spirit that feeds the soul. Another child might have drawn a picture of the milk horse or done a dance imitating the horse, doing exactly the same thing, making and telling. But my focus has always been language. Eventually, as Nikki told you, I went and studied English and philosophy. I worked for a publishing company. I became addicted to good grammar. Other than that, I'm normal. Punctuation matters, folks. It really does. Watch those apostrophes. Sometimes I assume wrongly that other people can get as excited as I do when words catch and hold a thought perfectly. For me, it's a magic moment, the fly ball landing in the mitt. I do believe that searching for that magic moment is an exercise for the brain, but also for the heart. Our most authentic selves shine most clearly when we try to articulate who we are. In fact, simply making the effort, we are exquisitely human. Well, I didn't last long in publishing. In those days, young women did not progress. They didn't get promotions. So with a friend, I took off to England, and we went hitchhiking through Europe and North Africa. Those were the golden years, the 1960s, when you could do things like that. But it was a true adventure, but eventually common sense and my mother's illness brought me back to Canada. And through those years, I kept journals that are now indispensable records of where I went, when and with whom, and what I thought about it all. A very different account of my life than my high school diary had been. Have any of you looked at your high school diaries? They're awful, aren't they? They're awful. We won't speak of it. We just won't speak of it. Mine exposed no literary talent except for one thing. Language was my source of power and comfort. And that's the heart of my message, that it can be yours too, the empowerment that comes with looking for and finding the right words. By writing things down, we make them more real. And here's a more elegant way to say this. We write to heighten our own awareness of life. We write to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospection. So back in Canada, excuse me, I tried various jobs, high school and worked for a newspaper in Belleville where my husband was teaching journalism at Loyalist College. I forgot to say, on New Year's Eve 1970, I got married to Bob Huggan, a Scot from Edinburgh who had emigrated to Canada earlier. I was writing a lot of poetry in those days and began running a creative writing course at the college, having no idea how to do it, just learning. And I didn't know what I was doing until I had the chance to take an actual writing course at Carleton University when my husband Bob was there on sabbatical doing his master's in journalism. We lived in university residences as house parents, a position that gave us free housing in exchange for counseling students, and also provided babysitters for our daughter Abby, who was then a baby. Eventually, we moved into Ottawa, and my husband had a job at the International Development Research Centre, and we lived in a lovely neighborhood in Ottawa South. You know, when I look back at those happy days of the 70s and 80s, it's a blur. It's a real blur. It all sped by so quickly. I'm so glad that I kept journals as well as taking photos to help me now pinpoint people and events. I think this is a wonderful quote by Madeleine Tien. Writing is a human action to assert oneself in the avalanche of time. When we lived in Ottawa, I was mainly a home mom. I got occasional work in high schools as a creative writing coach. I had 2 nights teaching writing fiction at the University of Ottawa. I also did occasional work for Peter Zosky's Morningside. Don't we all miss Morningside? Oh, it was wonderful, wasn't it? Those were great years. Not having a regular job gave me time to work on my own stories, and that's when the Elizabeth story started to be written. It was a long process because I hadn't imagined a full life for Elizabeth when I wrote the opening story, Celia Behind Me, that was published just in a little journal. She didn't have a last name, the town didn't have a name. I'd only wanted to focus on childhood bullying and the reasons for scapegoat behavior. As it happened, the story was read by somebody who asked me to write more stories about Elizabeth, and so she got a last name, the town got called Garton, and my career as a writer of fiction was established. The book got good reviews in Canada. It was added here and there to courses, but it wasn't noticed until it got to the United States. And that's sadly still often true for Canadian writers, that we've needed that stamp from down there. I hope that's changing now. But the positive American attention resulted in 2 prizes and a much larger audience. Most of my fan mail has actually been in the past from American teenagers. Eventually, the book was published and translated into French, Spanish, Italian, and even strangely Turkish. Here in Canada, because of its origins with a small Canadian publisher, it's had a less prominent existence. But the book is still alive and out there on the desk, thanks to Oberon Press, and on the shelves of the Manticore as well as the library. And I still love my fictional character, Elizabeth. And she still speaks of what it was like to grow up in the 1940s and the 1950s. So different from our children and grandchildren's experience. So that's enough about Elizabeth. This talk should be not about my writing, about yours, to remind you of the power of words. And so far, I've been talking about the past, and it's way more interesting to talk about the present, our personal present. But sadly, that means a return to sadness. I don't intend to speak for everyone here, as we're all different in the way we see our lives. But for me, there seems to be an inherent downside that comes along with gratitude for having lived this long. 82, widowed 15 years ago after 40 years of marriage, but still here. Many of us, meaning me, go forward in a state of missing and mourning. And I think that's important, not the sadness, but the remembering, which becomes the fabric of our existence. I'm going to read you a little poem. It was recently published in the New Quarterly, a literary journal that's on the shelves over at the Manticore. It's about one way to handle grief. Walking through grief is no straight line. You have to make your way around the pit, circling the deep, dark hole of loss that appears with no warning just where you'd planned to take your next step. So you have to go sideways, watching the ground. Careful now, careful. So easy to slip. Go round, go round, go round. At the time that I wrote this poem, it gave me a sense of agency, a feeling of being on top of things. Once I could say what it felt like to face the hole, I knew I'd be okay. But not looking at it, as we all know, is not the best way to handle feeling sad. In another frame of mind, I wrote a different poem, published in the Literary Review of Canada a couple of years ago. Whereas the earlier one suggests avoiding the problem of loss, this poem, Gift, suggests that our obligation is to remember those who've gone, and that we feed ourselves, our souls, by keeping memories alive. So here we go. This is called Gift. This morning, a snowy egret came to the stream, landing like grace, and like grace, unearned but present. His enormous wings spread wide in a show of perfect feather and bone unwrapping in the winter air. And then he folded up his body like a large white umbrella, inverting itself, spoke by spoke, to become a peculiar walking stick, standing upright in the water, waiting, even as I watched and waited too, for the moment his neck would flash out, and it came, that exquisite thrust, all energy and appetite and memory. We live. We carry with us all that's gone, all who've gone. We feed ourselves on what we can remember. So, another way of dealing with loss in the past. Writing about how we feel, who we are, putting ourselves on paper for ourselves and for those who come after us, do it. Who knows you better than you yourself? There are various ways of doing this. I'll give you one example from my life. My father, Ron Howie, was a chemist who admired clear thinking. One of his pet phrases was taken from the TV show Dragnet, during which the detective character often said, "Just the facts, ma'am." In his later years, my dad produced a typed record of his life. I brought it to show you. So it doesn't really matter how we do it. It's in a 3-ring binder, pages perfectly typed, and it came from the letters that he had written to his mother from the time he went away to university, and then when he courted my mother and got married and had a couple of children. Every week he wrote her a letter, and she saved them in bundles by year. And when she died, he got the letters, and he and my mother sat night after night extrapolating the information that he put into the diary, into the book that he wrote for us. So he shows us the events of his life in context, and he even writes about the changes in the world that happened since his birth in 1914. The atomic bomb, the dial telephone, plastics, pesticides. There's only the faint glimmer of sentiment. No, there's none. But it is such a valuable family document, and I'm so grateful for the information about his parents. If he hadn't done it, we wouldn't have it. And I want to emphasize how important that is by this, here we are, by this Latin phrase, de non apparentibus et non existentibus est idem ratio. As to things that do not appear, the conclusion is the same as to things that do not exist. If you don't write it down, honey, nobody else is going to. This motivating truth is from the Law Dictionary, but I think it applies to us as individuals. We have an opportunity to write down our lives for ourselves, for the present, but also for later. It's a real sorrow to me that my mother's family, although she and my aunts and uncles were all really good anecdotalists, didn't have a really good oral tradition of storytelling. So they came from the Isle of Lewis in the mid-1850s, and I think a lot of those Scots left things behind and put all their energy into settling here. And so sentimental stories were simply not part of their repertoire. My mom did tell stories about her own growing up near Kincardine, and my sister and I keep trying to remember. There was a favorite story she had about the horses that drew their wagon and sleigh. And what were the names of those horses? Do you remember? No. And there was something funny about one of the horses. Oh, I can't remember. Because we didn't write it down when our mother was telling us the story, and she didn't write it down. And so it's like a little glimmer on the past, if only she had written it down. My way of preserving the past is just for myself, really, and it's something I do. I thought I brought one to show you. It's what I call a day book. I started this a long time ago. Just a little book like this, and in it I paste cartoons I like, photographs, poetry, pictures. Here's one here that's it's just as it happens. I don't know whether you can see it here. It's a picture of me with several school friends right here on the outskirts of Orillia in Severn. The year that we all turned 50, my friends from Elmira had a pajama party right here. And what was the name of the newspaper then? The Orillia Packet in Time? Yes, we were in the newspaper. So I have the clipping right here. And it was at the home of my friend Marg, who's sitting right there. So a bit of sentiment, but this little book, I put in it things that I wanted to keep close to my heart, close to memory. And I took this with me when I was traveling. I had it always with me. Now I have many of them. And you can start any time. Isn't that wonderful that I had that with me today? Now, there's all kinds of ways to do it. Writing about yourself and about your life, who you are, who you've been, the family you come from. For the women here in the audience, one way, you don't have to have photographs and things. The teacups that you've saved from your mother that are so beautiful, those lovely, lovely china teacups. Your family says, your kids, your daughters, your sons, Mom, we're not going to use those. We really don't want them. They don't. Our children don't want those things. So what can you do? Sit down for an afternoon with one of those teacups, describe it, and then maybe try to remember your mom. and the friends that she would invite over for tea. You might never show this to anybody, but it's going to be really good for you to do that remembering. For you men that may not have an emotional connection to teacups, what about, I don't know, tools, fishing lures that you inherited from your dad? Are they still out in the garage, or have you passed them on? Or did your dad leave you his library, his walking stick, his collection of brass screws? Who was your father? Who were his friends? You don't have to do it all at once. You can do a little day by day. Now, I'm guessing that most of us here still have actual address books besides contacts on your phone. If you have an address book, here's an easy thing to do. Leaf through it. Some of those old friends are gone. Stop for a minute. Write a few lines about what you miss about that person. As to the living, stop at the address of an old friend you've not been in touch with. Send a postcard. Just a few lines. Imagine the smile on that person's face. There are great postcards over at the Manticore. The young woman there takes photographs around Orillia and they're a nice size, so you can write big, don't have to say a lot, but I'm a great believer in letters and postcards as a way of keeping our souls alive, keeping connections. Now, I'm suggesting looking backwards here, aren't I? Because it does make writing easier to have some material at hand. But your new practice on the daily business I'm talking about can be about the here and now. Every day, make a note, a brief note, a word or two, not grocery lists, but that's not a bad idea. You could start with a list. The list is a great device. However, I'm not here to suggest that writing, or should I say, writing well, is necessarily easy. William Zinsser, as you see by this quote, suggests that a clear sentence is no accident. But that's the point I want to make this morning. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be good the first time. You can spend some time with your thoughts making them even better. And that's what's good for your brain, and that's what's good for your heart, and that's what's good for your soul. Making and telling, that's what's really important. There it is. Putting something into words makes it concrete, but not necessarily written in stone that it can't be changed. We may be surprised by what we first write and want to change it. Bernard Malamud, the American novelist, said, "Great writing leads constantly into surprise, and writers should be the first ones surprised. Unless we put our thoughts and feelings into words, they do not exist." Remember that Latin phrase? As to things that do not appear, the conclusion is the same as to things that do not exist. I was going to go back just for a minute to the Elizabeth stories because it got me into a lot of hot water in my town. Because some people were sure that the central character, Elizabeth, was me, and thus her parents were my parents, and everything she did, it was pretty tough. But I want to say that, and this goes for anyone here who is putting your hand at writing stories, what a writer of realistic fiction does is to take experience, first-hand and second-hand and third-hand, and weave it into something new. That's what poets do. The same can be said for the writers of personal essays, writing with the purpose of making and telling a story that's new but springs from old material. At some point, some of you may have read my afterword for Margaret Lawrence's story collection, A Bird in the House. It seems to be the first item on Google, as if I had written the book. Another reason to not trust AI. Anyway, I mention this in the afterword that Lawrence spoke of her stories as fictional autobiography. But that's not what I was doing in the Elizabeth stories, although I used familiar material. Sometimes writers use imagination as they think about the past and take what is remembered as material to be altered. But it's also important to realize that we do this even when we're not writing. There's a very close and unconscious relationship between memory and imagination. In a recent study of the brain, a book by Changan Ranganath, called Why We Remember, the author points out something incredibly interesting to me. MRI studies show that the same area of the brain that is activated when we remember is equally activated when we imagine, and that remembering and imagining are really like Siamese twins. In other words, as we attempt to recall an event or a person or a place, we're using the same brain cells, the same part of the brain. And every time we remember something, that remembrance alters a little bit as our imagination is being activated too. Every time. Are we imagining or are we just remembering? So to some extent, this fact accounts for the differing memories that occur within a family. If you haven't had an argument with a family member about a past event, you are a rare bird. It's another reason to keep a journal, because if you've written notes, it proves you're right. I'm encouraging you to write not just about the truths, but for the fun you're going to have. My second book, You Never Know, is much more explicit in turning fragments of my experience into fiction, as I quite consciously used locales where I've lived as settings. I'm going to give you a quick example from the first story, which is one of my favorites in the collection. It's called End of the Empire. I created fictional events pertaining to a fictional child named Hannah Louise Clement in a very real London, Ontario. I aimed to show how, in the 1950s, Canada's cultural affiliation swung from being entirely British to being increasingly American. I tried to make it slightly humorous, so here's how it starts, with Hannah Louise as the narrator of her story. Long ago, when I was young, I was in love with King George VI. It was, as you might imagine, a rather lopsided relationship, but within its limitations so real that his death in 1952 diminished for some time my expectations for happiness on this earth. And it goes on. Now, to be honest, I too loved King George with a true and passionate heart, and I nearly died when he did. And it is also true that around that time, I was crazy about Roy Rogers, who, wouldn't you know, was king of the cowboys. Sometimes life just hands you material, and you have to use it to make something new. That's what material is for. The story was widely anthologized over the years, but I have to tell you, my best moment, it was bought by BBC4 and read by a British actress on Story Hour. She did a good job, except for her Canadian accent. We always wondered whether Queen Elizabeth, who does not fare well in my story, was listening. Just a thrill to thought. Life continued to give me material. We moved to Kenya. When a 3-year contract concluded, we were ready to go back to Canada. But just as we were leaving, Bob was offered a job in the south of France. Seemed like a good thing for our daughter to improve her French. So off we went. I didn't have a regular job, so I had time to write, and that's where the stories in You Never Know were mainly written. I was able to look back and use Kenya as a setting, as well as Canada and Scotland and France, as Nikki told you, for the stories I wanted to make and tell. Many of them similar in theme. How difficult it is to really know people. How difficult it is to know ourselves. How easy it is to make mistakes you can't fix. Here's a bit from the final story in You Never Know about a young woman's summer on a Scottish island. She hadn't understood that the young man she was with was actually in love with her. Years later, she feels terribly sad. And what saddens her is that knowing people is such a difficult affair. And people so seldom get it right. And the story ends with a question that is hers, but actually comes from my heart. Why we enter each other's lives and how we are meant to fit together is more than is given us to know. But that's what we want, isn't it? That's what we want to understand. So, I was ready to go back home in 1993. You Never Know was published then. My husband got a job in the Philippines. I did not go cheerfully. I did not go cheerfully at all. I don't like hot weather. But there we were for the next 5 years. And we lived on a compound with 50 other families connected with the Rice Institute, and that was wonderful in a way because they came from so many different rice-growing countries. And we had a wonderful book group there. If anybody wants to ask me about the book group, I'll tell you. But here's the reason I'm telling you this, because you just never know in life what's going to happen. Because of where I was situated, not so far away as I would have been if I'd been back in Ottawa, I was invited to be a representative Canadian writer at literary festivals in Hobart and Canberra. And that began my Australian life. As I say in Belonging, a memoir about making home wherever you happen to land, it taught me a lesson. We cannot see the future, and we do well to trust the flow of events in which we find ourselves. How could I possibly have known in advance that the island of Tasmania would become a second home, a place where I feel so familiar? I've been back 6 times, teaching in the schools, giving writing workshops, becoming friends with other writers, getting to know and love the bush. Later on, when Belonging was published in Australia, I saw even more of the country, Perth and Brisbane and Adelaide and Melbourne, but Hobart's where my heart is. It only gets 1 chapter in Belonging. Much of the book concerns our decision to retire in the south of France rather than return to Ottawa. We'd been away so long, we'd become international Canadians. I was constantly identifying myself as not British, not American, no, I'm not Swedish. So I was far more aware of being Canadian than I am in Orillia. I don't have to tell you. The work also established, the work that we did was to restore a very old stone house, already named Mas Blanc, and make it ours. With the house came property with a little olive grove and land for fruit trees that we grew and a big garden. And for many years, we lived the dream. But as everyone knows who has fulfilled a dream, that involved a reality of really hard work. And you know this too. If you do a lot of hard work about something, you begin to own it. You really feel connected. And I believed I would stay there forever. Even after Bob died 15 years ago, I still intended to stay there. That was my home that we had made. So what I did was I opened a writer's retreat. I had a bed sitting room in the barn, and people could come for peace and quiet to my place, and that helped me support myself so I could stay there forever. But I didn't. I'm here now. But anyway, here's my best advice for turning what you have around you into story or poem or remembrance. You really can start anywhere. Let me just see if I got this right. At the end of, I should say, in belonging, one of the interesting things I did in belonging was to make a memoir about my life. But as I'm also a writer of fiction and realistic fiction, I wanted to show how that happens. So at the end of the book, there are 3 short stories. And one of them is called Start Anywhere. One of them, is called Starting with the Chair. And the idea is that you can start anywhere to tell a story. And the story I tell about the chair is absolute fiction, except the chair is really real. It's now in my bedroom here in Orillia. It was my great-grandmother's chair. But what I did with that chair is I looked at it for a long time and wondered what kind of story it might want to tell me. So the chair became an engine. The chair became a door. The chair was key to the door. You can start with a chair. You can start with a teacup. You can start with an old boot. You can start with something that happened yesterday. The important thing, I think, is that we start. I think stories are essential as undergirding to our lives. And even if it seems that no one is listening, we have a role as elders to tell stories to pass on about what we know and what we knew. Our families, they're too busy or too far away to listen to us now. But what we can do for them is to write our stories, writing what we remember, writing about what we've experienced, writing about the world as we've known it. All of us have stories. We can take our time making and telling if we're writing them. We can write just for ourselves. Maybe it's an anecdote that's true. Maybe it's a story that's come from a true event. Maybe it's a poem. Maybe it's one beautiful sentence. Maybe it's just one word. And you think about that word, and it opens a world for you. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. Now, I'm nearly done. Yes, I'm nearly done. But I want to go back to the wonderful morning we spent with Tony Bianco. A few weeks ago, many of you were here then? Yes? Good. He showed us a lot of his paintings on these screens. If you were here, you will remember the final shot of the yellow maple tree in its full glory. A painting, he told us, came not from just one tree in his experience, but was a perfected composite. Isn't that what I've been talking about? Using reality and doing something with it. It was a memorable painting, what you might call realistic fiction on canvas. And let's see if I brought what I wanted to bring. Just a minute. There we are. As it happens, I love trees. I could have brought along photos today of all the trees I've taken pictures of since I've come to Orillia. But instead, I'm going to read you a recent poem that I think goes along with Tony's painting. So bring that to mind. And if you didn't see Tony's painting, visualize a really tall maple tree with yellow leaves, with a blue sky behind it. But also, I'm reading this poem because it's a little bridge to Tom Allen coming next week, because it's about music too. Here we go. It's called October Music. Even the air is charged. I swear, if light were sound, there'd be cymbals and horns, a bright cacophony of brass. Late afternoon sun crashes down through yellow maples, translucent as glass and as fragile. Stems breaking from branches, leaves drift to earth, spinning in spirals like random notes, piano, piccolo, leaving huge pockets of silent blue, hundreds of feet above. Music for the eye, goes to my feet, and I shuffle a two-step through the woods. So that's to get you thinking about music for next week. And this poem leads to the end of my talk and makes a connection to music and Tom Allen, because Tom Allen is in the process of creating a musical score to accompany poetry by Newfoundland poet Don Mackay. Poetry that, in this case, finds its connection with geological formation. As it happens, Don Mackay is one of my dearest friends. We met more than 60 years ago at university, and I can't recommend highly enough that you search out his poetry and his essays. They're in the library. The Manticore may already have one or two. If they don't, ask to order them. It's part of having a wonderful bookshop right here in town. I'm just going to stop for a minute. I have to do this. Do not use Amazon. Order the books from Manticore. They come very quickly. Bookstores are essential to our culture. For me, a good bookshop is a place of worship. I sometimes go to the Manticore just to smell. It's like incense. New books, I can smell them. It's really important. Anyway, enough of that. Back to Don Mackay. He's won just about every prize a poet can. His poetry is astonishing and accessible. But the reason I'm talking about Don is this. He's had a habit as long as I've known him. And I'm going to pass it on to you today. Don always has a little notebook at the top pocket of his shirt. Just small, tucks it in. He'll have a pen or a pencil in there too, or in his pant pocket. And when he sees something or hears something or thinks something that stirs his mind, he makes a note. And from these notes, these quick thoughts or observances, come his poems. Not a day goes by without a line or two. And to inspire you now, my helpers, Patricia and Eric, are going to pass out these little notepads for you to take home and use daily if you can. A word here, a word there, it all adds up. This has been our motto today, one which I hope you will take away with you now. Nulla die sine linea, not a day without a line. Thank you.
And while you're busy mulling over those beautiful words and the words that you are going to make, we'll take a little 20-minute break, and in the lobby you will find coffee, cookies, and books for sale, Isabel's books for sale, and everyone else you know. We'll see you in 20 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you.
So as you take your seats, Isabel will be available for questions. And just a reminder that there will be two of us as usual with the mics. Just a reminder, if you're able, please stand up so that you can be identified and caught on camera for the video. And keep the mic close to your mouth. Otherwise, nobody will hear you. Okay, thank you.
Well, oh, this is good. I like this. No questions. Let's go home. Yes.
Hi again. Forms of communication, what do you use these days to communicate? Do you use texting or email or what? Facebook?
Communicate with whom?
Anyone.
Anybody. They know me by my face at the post office. They do. They do. People say, "Oh, hi. How's it going?" They change more often at the post office in terms of their staff. I'm a regular, but anybody who's been there they know I'm there almost every day. So I do still send letters. I buy stamps. I love buying stamps. I send birthday cards. I send postcards. The postcards at Manticore really are nice, by the way. I text. I've been taught by my daughter in Toronto you send a text to ask if you can have a phone call. Remember you used to phone people? Drives me mad. So I text to say, could we have a call? Or I sometimes text someone. I set up WhatsApp with people in other places than here. I use the phone. I use email a lot. And where email is meant to help you trim down what you have to say to 2 or 3 lines, I write letters on email. They have paragraphs, I indent. And I'm really careful on the punctuation as well. So I use whatever I can, whatever the person does that I'm communicating with. For example, this lovely friend, Don Mackay, whom I've known for so long, he is a true Luddite. He does not have a computer. And so we only communicate by written letter, which is wonderful. So I do whatever I can. I think using language to reach out and get, you absorb warmth from somebody else's words. So I use whatever I can. Yeah. Yes.
You strike me as a person who's never experienced writer's block.
Oh, yes. I've had sometimes 2 or 3 years of writer's block. Sometimes weeks, months. I wasn't going to tell you this. I don't write every day. But I really want you to. Life interferes. You have plans, things go wrong, you don't always do. When I do, I really feel happy. But one of the reasons I think that I have been a bit blocked, I've had lots of things go wrong with my health, and some people are really good at being able to write through pain or through discouragement or through loss. I give myself completely to whatever's happening. So if I have pain, that's what's happening. I don't do well to ignore it. And so there's been a lot of time, and especially in the last several years, when I haven't produced the way I once produced. And it's kind of like being an old apple tree. I don't produce the same apples. But I'm a happy tree. when you do have writer's block, any of you who are writing, there's various ways around writer's block. And for me, I think one of the most helpful things that I tried to get across today is to read poetry. Whether or not you're writing poetry, favorite poems that you have a heart association with, that you learned when you were young, or anyone here who gets the New Yorker magazine? I've subscribed for 50 years probably, and some of the poetry that I have found in the New Yorker, more in the past than now, I have to say, has been so inspiring to my own life. There's a poem by Elizabeth Bishop that some of you might know called One Art. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Lose something every day. And the poem goes on from car keys to people to places. And it's a wonderful poem. I keep that on my bulletin board in my den. And very often that inspires me to write a few lines. Something I'm losing, something I've lost. So I think that's a way through writer's block. And other times, why not enjoy it? I'm not, why not say, I'm not writing just now, I just can't think of what to say, and do something else instead. Make it drawing. Drawing and writing are very closely aligned. And that's what I forgot to tell you. I'm so glad you said this. I forgot the very last bit of this, I think. When you're in doubt, draw a pair. In other words, keep your hand moving. Just keep your hand moving. Anybody else? Oh, good. Oh, no.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you have done daily practice writing in both morning and evening, and if there's a difference in what you think you write or the way you write, whether it's the start of your day or the end of your day.
I'm having trouble hearing you. That's my problem, not yours.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. So I'm wondering if you have practiced daily writing both in the morning when you first wake up, but also in the evening just before you go to sleep, and if it produces a different type of writing depending on whether it's the start of your day or the end of your day.
It's very different, isn't it? It's very different. And I think that's why the little notebook that I gave you is very handy for someone who is considering using that material that comes to us when we're just going to sleep or just waking up. You do find a more profound connection with underneath your daily life. And there are words there that can come up. I think if I'm understanding your question, I would say both those times of day are really, really useful to attach. And I just want to say that you were looking for Rex Deverell, and he's sitting over there. So there. Okay. That's the Denise. Good. Somebody else?
This morning, just before coming here, and I confess I didn't read all of the article, but the New York Times had an article in which they compared a couple of 100,000 of pieces that were written with the help of AI with a couple of 100,000 that were not written with the help of AI. And interestingly, one of the things that was quite different was not the sentences or stuff like that, or the grammar. What was different was the response to the question. The AI seemed to channel people into certain ways of dealing with the topic, whereas the people that didn't have AI guiding them came up with much more original and a much more wider sense of what the topic was. And I thought that's worth mentioning here, because what you're talking about is each person in the room looking within to see what their ideas are, what your idea of the day is.
That's
anyway,
right.
I thought it'd be worth mentioning to you.
Thank you.
It was just in this morning, so it may still be available.
Right, thank you. Some of you may follow on Substack Margaret Atwood's column from the Borough, and she wrote several maybe months ago now, a very funny piece, but rather chilling, about her relationship with Claude, who is the AI person that you can have conversation with on any number of topics. Can't you just, wouldn't you love to be there to hear Margaret Atwood and Claude? And she unwraps how it works and what it means in a humorous way. But I've also heard other people, scientists in particular, talking about what AI and Claude is doing in terms of answering questions. And you're so right, it steers people in a particular way. And that's what is, I think, so fearful for us of our generation, who we were not steered. And I think that's the gift that we have to give to our children and grandchildren and the community in which we live, this sense of opportunity in the brain, that we all may be thinking something different now or coming at a question or a belief in a different way. So I find myself, stunned by what's happening, and very encouraging of my 10-year-old granddaughter to keep writing by hand as much as possible. Yeah, just to stay away from that. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to know how you find a lost word or name.
Okay. He knows. Okay, so this happens to me a lot. I'm in the middle of a really fascinating sentence, and it just goes, it just blows. So I've noticed in the last few years that my brain is an aging brain, and that's just the truth, and that the connections aren't as sharp. So I put a lot of work into remembering. Let's see if I can find it here now. Just a minute. Just a minute. 3 words. And if I can remember those words, then I know that I will get through the loss of that word and it will come to me. And so I can't find it, but I think I can do it. So my words are 2 columns, kohlrabi and kumquat. I can say that. I've remembered kohlrabi and kumquat. And there's a path through those 2 columns, and it's hibiscus. Now I can think of the word. Now I know that my brain works. I've remembered kohlrabi, kumquat, hibiscus. You must choose your own. You probably, like me, have certain words that you just think, I know. Memorize that word. Find another one that you can memorize. Make 2 columns and your word will come through. That's my best advice. But it works. It works. Oh, good, we're done. This has been so much fun. Okay, I feel I belong in Orillia now, and that's a lovely feeling.
Since you said you've lived in France for a long time, I'm curious to know whether you've written anything in French. That's my first question. And my second question is, what brought you to Orillia now, after having lived so far away for so long?
I studied, I went to university in Montpellier for a year to take the French for foreigners. Et maintenant, je parle français juste un peu, mais avec un accent terrible. So I've never written in French other than I write letters to people back on my computer, and I do use the computer dictionary to check sometimes that my French is correct. But I never became fluent enough in French to be able to construct something that was useful. But I love the language. I loved being in France and hearing it. I could almost understand it. Sometimes you can enjoy a language even when you don't understand it, like Italian, you know. But I could never write in French. One thing and another in my life, that's why I was trying to say, in terms of going to the Philippines, where I didn't want to go, but had I not gone there, I would never have got to Australia. And we can't always see where we are in the river. And the river is constantly moving. You can't step in the same river twice. That's Heraclitus said that. But also, I think there's a poetic way of saying we are the river. I am the river. I am flowing through life. And I'm going where the current is taking me. And the current brought me here because through a set of circumstances, I reacquainted myself with someone I had known a long time before. And he remembered me, and I remembered him. And now I live here because of that. And that's Eric who asked the question. So I can also say to you, this is a private meeting, you're not going to say that I said this, okay? Love can come at any age. It really can. That's my best news. Thank you so much.
I want to say thank you so much, Isabel, for those inspiring words. And years ago, I was really into genealogy, and I got quite a lot of information. And I thought, maybe I should write a book about this. This is like, wow, you know, I've got so many generations. And I've started on it, and I got caught up, and well, life happened, and many years later, but you've inspired me to restart. Good. And yes, it was like start with a chair that kind of got me.
Oh, good.
So thank you for that. And I'm sure that we all have many different ideas, and hopefully those words are inspiring to write it down.
I've got one thing to add.
Okay.
This is quick. I was talking about teacups. This is for women, but it could be for men too. Look at the clothes that you have. Let a pair of shoes speak to you. And I'm just going to give you a little example from what I'm wearing. This little sharp little vest here. This was, in 1961, a dress I wore to a formal in London, Ontario, when I was at university. I was never asked to a formal again. It had a nice little top, fitted waist, nice skirt, very sharp, 61. My life didn't include that kind of thing. Eventually, I had the top taken off, and it was a skirt, very smart skirt, wore it with a frilly blouse. That did well a little bit in the 70s, 80s, maybe wore it once, gone. In a trunk. What can I do with this, I wondered. And I took it to a dressmaker in France, and it's my vest. So, look at some of your clothes. They tell stories. Your clothes tell stories. Your shoes tell stories. So I just remembered I was going to tell you that.
Okay, so just a reminder, if you didn't get a chance to purchase one of Isabel's books and you would like to, Manticore Books does carry them. And next week we have Tom Allen from the CBC, who will be talking about music for the last in our series of Feed the Soul. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So,